So we look at the general fund here. It might be a little hard to read for everybody. So on the taxes, the latest numbers I have, this is prior to the appeals, we're up about 11%. So right now, according to DCAD, the taxes we would get would be about 248 or so. Now, so I plugged in 240 just as a general placeholder. I get weekly updates from DCAD. So I get a report every single week after the appeals are done each week as to what our current tax revenues are going to be. So when we actually approve this in 2 months, I'll know what that number is, plus or minus a little bit. We always end up with slightly more because when you pay late, there's like an 8% penalty by paying late 1 month, and we have a handful of people that pay late. So we typically collect like 102% of our actual amount that we're supposed to get. We're typically slightly ahead of it. So the reason why we're a little bit here is that we still have a couple that have paid us. Plus, if you're over 65, you can choose to pay your taxes quarterly. We have about 8 residents that do that. So they pay their property taxes every 3 months. So it kind of dribbles in each quarter, which you can do without penalty and without interest. You can do it interest-free. You can do that. So that's kind of that. The debt servicing, the same nickel. I'm assuming we're going to keep the same 5 cents for debt servicing. So that number's about the same. Sales tax, we're up 11% this year. So we're going to come in at right around 34 to 35,000 in sales tax. So typically what I do for the sales tax is I just take last year's number and I don't assume any growth. I don't take last year's number and add 11% more on top of that. You could do that, but I don't like to do that. I just like to use last year's number to be a little conservative. So like we're seeing here, after 8 months, we've taken in 30,137. We're already over what I budgeted after only 8 months, which means we're running considerably ahead on the sales tax. Interest is just a number. It's just a guess at what we're going to get on interest. What's this? Building permits. We typically have been budgeting 30,000 on building permits. So let me preface this by giving kind of a quick budgeting sidebar here for a second. So I teach budgeting. It's one of the topics I teach at the university. So most of what we do when we're doing budgeting, a lot of the numbers they're stationary. So we're at steady state. If you want to predict, the numbers are the same as they were last year. They're very close. The numbers are going to track a line. If we don't do anything in this building, the electricity cost, the best guess, is what it was last year. Just pick the same numbers because we're in steady state. Most of the numbers that we have are like that. They're fairly in steady state. Now, if something's changed, if the process has changed, if you changed where you work, then using what your totals from last year aren't a good predictor. So some of the things we do are erratic. They're not the same year to year. They're very erratic. There's a handful of items like that. The ones that are erratic, they're either controllable, and they're erratic because we pick it. So we pick the playground. We could pick 50,000 for the playground. We pick 0 next year. It's erratic because we choose it to be that way. It's totally controllable. Money that we spend on road repairs. We can decide that number every year to be different. That's controllable. Other things are outside our control, and they're erratic. If they're outside our control and they're erratic, then all you try and do is get it right over the long run. So for instance, how many water leaks are we going to have next year? We don't know. We don't know when the leak is going to happen. We don't know if the sewer line is going to break. We can't predict that. We don't know about leaks. It's high one year, it's low the next year. They go all over the place. So when it's highly erratic like that, and you have no control over it, all you try and do is just kind of hit the average. Because you're going to miss, but then the next year you're going to be low. It's all over the place. Building permits is one of those ones that we have absolutely no control over. We could have 4 people walk in tomorrow and say, I just bought that empty lot, I'm going to build on it. So we have no way of knowing how many houses are going to get built next year. So we've just always plugged in 30,000. For us, that's about 4 houses. And that's about where we've been at, 3 to 5 houses. Now, if we're high, if we're high on that, it doesn't hurt us because the building inspector then, we don't pay him. So the expense side drops. So if we don't have the house, we don't have the building inspector. So the revenue and the expense are lockstep. So we're not going to pay the building inspector to inspect the house that didn't happen. So that's where the 30,000 comes from. And you'll see it's been 30,000, fairly often. We kept it at 30. It was 41 one year. We did a budget amendment. I think it was, we put in 40 and it was 48. But basically, we just try and hit the middle. So that's where the 30 comes from. Now, in the past years, when I first got here, they used to put 90,000 in that line. They would put 90,000 there. That's one of the problems why the town was bankrupt, because they would put most of the revenue in that line. And that was a guess. The problem is, on the expense side, they spend it. That's what caused massive financial problems back in 2005, 6, 7. Okay. So we throttle that number back. That number is only 30, but that's where it comes from. It's just kind of a long run, kind of average number. But if somebody says, let's make it 20, make it 20. Again, it's out of our control, and it's erratic. We don't know. And I just assume same numbers last year. 30 seems to be about right. We're 22. We've got another house that's going to be coming in. I've already seen the plans for it. It's going to be a big house. It's going to be about 8,000 square feet of air-conditioned space. It's going to be about a $20,000 building permit. All right, inspections. Now, here we get into all the numbers. A lot of these numbers are not material-based. They don't matter. They're too small to matter. They're less than 0.5% of our budget. So typically, we just use, what did we do last year? Where were we kind of at? But, whether or not we're going to have fence permits and they're going to be 150, 300, or 400, pick it. It's not a material number. So, I just picked the number, 400. If somebody says, I'd like that to be 350, then set it to 350. But it's basically in steady state. We just look at these kind of numbers. What's this, what does that say? Oh, re-inspect fees. So re-inspect fees are on failed inspections. So you can see this year here it was $8,000. Last year, that was due primarily to one house that had a lot of problems. But that house is done, so we're kind of back in steady state of around 3. Most of these numbers here, again, are very similar. Franchise fees, it's funny, our franchise fees have been dropping. The CoServe, we used to get a lot of money from CoServe, from your power bills, and it's gone down by about 10% a year. So either you're using less electricity or CoServe's been lowering their rates, but we've been steadily dropping in the amount of franchise fees we get from CoServe, which is interesting. But so that's why that number has been revised down from 32 down to 30, because we're going to end up right around 30. So each quarter we get franchise fees from the phone companies, and each year we get it from CoServe. So 30 is right about where we're going to be this year. So that's where that 30 comes from. We have admin fees. These fees here are fees from the utility fund and from Rocky Point. And what these fees are the utility fund is treated like a business. There's government funds and there's businesses. Utility fund, the accounting for it as if it's as a business fund, just like any other business. Well, that means that that fund, in most cities, it has to pay the city for the fees that the city has. So for instance, things that come in like the audit, the annual audit that gets done each year. The city pays that bill, but yet half the audit is the utility fund. So the utility fund gets allocated a percentage of the audit fees. The insurance on the city, part of that insurance pays for the utility fund. The billing, the accounting, the banking, who sends out, who handles all the bank deposits, right? That's all done by Linda. So there's a lot of fees that the city does, like mowing. utility area back behind that fence, that's all mowed. The sewer plant has to be mowed. Well, the city writes the check to the mower. So we have a lot of expenses, and there's a spreadsheet. Ken Guthrie is the one that came up with it. And it has about a dozen different costs that the city has that it splits it. It takes the cost and says, how much of this is Rocky Point, how much of this is the utility fund, and how much of this is the city. So that's what that admin fee is there. Because it's not fair for you and us to use our tax money to pay Linda's salary when she's spending a couple hours, let's say today, doing the banking for the utility fund. The utility fund should be paying her salary for that time. Because that's what a business does. Otherwise, the utility fund would have to hire a bookkeeper. They would have to hire an accountant. So that's kind of what that is. That's what that fee is about. And I work with the auditor on that fee. And the auditor makes sure that fee makes sense. Okay? But Rocky Point the same way. There is no free lunch for the MDD. The MDD over in Rocky Point, who collects the money? That money gets in that drop box right there. Well, who does the banking? Linda does the banking. Who pays for the insurance for Rocky Point? The city does. Who mows Rocky Point? The city does. So there's expenses that the city has that utility funds have to pay for. Okay? Now, there's also a credit back the other way because we pay Summer out of the utility fund. And Summer actually does work on the building permits. So Summer's job, she's got two jobs, building permits and the utilities. So as the city, we reverse it and give a credit back to the utility fund because the utility fund pays all of Summer's pay. So we have fair's fair. When Summer spends part of her day working on building permits, that's a city thing. So part of Summer's job is city business. But we're not giving her two paychecks. She gets one paycheck. And then we handle the taxes and all that kind of stuff. So that's what that fee is there. And that's because we have to treat the utility fund like a business. Okay? There's no way, you can't subsidize, you can do it, but it's not good practice. So I asked the auditor once, do some cities merge it? Do some cities not do this? And he said, yes, some cities don't do this, and there's two reasons why they don't. He said, one reason why is because they actually don't want to show it because they're moving the money from the utility fund to pay for the fire and the policemen. And they don't want anybody to know. So that's why they don't put it on the ballot. They don't put it on the statement. The problem if you don't do it, besides that's not kosher, is that our auditors have said, if you want to figure out what the rates should be, if you want to do a rate study to figure out what are the right rates, what should you be charging, you have to include this. You have to make the utilities pay their own way. You have to charge the right rates so that the utility fund pays its share. So that's why the auditors have us do this. Okay? But that's kind of what that is there. Okay? Any questions? Pretty good? Again, we're just kind of going through, kind of real high level there. Lien receipts, everybody sees that 23,000 down here, the lien receipts, that was the house. That was the house that we just waived the lien on. So that was them paying us back for pumping out the pool. So that's kind of what that looks like there. So that is the budget. Where did I skip? Where's the debt? Oh, that's the revenues. Okay. All right, so that's the revenue side. Making people leave. My students do the same thing. They leave when I'm teaching. Oh, you're going to cut the cake. Okay, cut the cake. That'll work.
Maybe I would stay then.
Okay, so on the general fund expenses here, so this is where we're at again year to date through 8 months. So through 8 months, We're about 192 under operating expenses. The debt servicing has all been paid. So we're slightly under budget right now. Now there's a couple of issues I want to point out because there's an area where I disagree with the auditor. The auditor and I have a difference of opinion. And we do what the auditor says. Okay? So the auditor wins. So when it comes to a tie, the auditor wins the tie. So one of the things that the auditor does is that if we get a reimbursement, or if we put something in one fund that should be in another, instead of just going in and correcting it, the auditor doesn't want us to do that. The auditor wants us to go in and just make another entry and double it. So for instance, suppose that we bought a piece of equipment for the playground, which was $5,000. We decided, you know what, it's not working, let's return it and get a refund. And we get a full refund back of $5,000. What I would do is I would go into the accounting where we had the expense of $5,000, and I would put a minus $5,000. I would zero it out because we didn't spend any money, we got it back. The auditor says no. The auditor says leave the $5,000 in the expense, take the $5,000 of the refund and put it as a miscellaneous revenue. So put it under the revenues, so now you have a revenue and an expense, and they'll cancel when you net them. I said, but then I can inflate the revenues by just buying stuff and returning it. And that's why you don't do that. But under GAAP, you're allowed, you can either take a discount or, so that's the way he likes to do it. So what it makes for is when we have an issue where, let's say Linda inadvertently pays something out of the wrong fund. She's paying the co-serve bill for the city, and then she pays the co-serve bill for the utility fund electronically with the drop-down menu, and suddenly there's a $4,000 expense that hits the general fund. Well, I look at the accounting every day. So I look at the bank and I go, hey Linda, what'd you do? You paid co-serve twice. And she goes, oh crap, yeah, you're right. Well, when she reverses it and now pays it out of the utility fund, she's got to transfer money from the utility fund to the general fund to negate it. The auditor says, count that as revenue. So that means the general fund, are you catching hold of this?
Oh, I understand.
The general fund now shows an expense of $4,000 for the utility fund, which screws that up. Then there's an offset of the revenue of $4,000, which screws up the revenue now. But that's the way the auditor wants to do it. So it drives me nuts because he won't let me, put it as a contra expense. You know what I mean?
Can we not get another auditor?
Well, but I mean so in some of the other stuff, that's why last year we had all this stuff. So for instance, here's what killed us last year. We had a house start, and literally 2 weeks before we had the court case with the appeals court. 2 weeks later, so the check had been in our bank account for less than a week. We refunded it back. We said, look, we're not going to do the inspections. Here's your check. Here's the money back. The auditor made us count revenues of like $18,000 to that building permit and an expense of $18,000 on the expense line, rather than just letting us negate it. So our expenses last year, the revenues are much higher than the budget, but the expenses are much higher than the budget. It's because of this auditor issue. He won't do it the way I like to do it. I prefer to do the contra account, and I prefer to net.
You talked about this before. We can do it. We can run it like what you're saying, your preferred method. But when he comes in, you're going to have to back it all up.
Exactly. He's going to reverse it. He's going to make it do that way. Now, we've discussed it, and I'm not pressing him on it. I mean, this is the way I think we should do it. He disagrees. He wins. It's no problem. I don't have a problem. As long as you all understand where it's coming from. As long as now that you know what it is, if you look at some of the lines, that doesn't look like yellow, okay? Where's the yellow? Anyway, so here's one of the issues that's come up.
It's been cut, yeah.
So if you look,
There's a lot there.
so if you look at the,
Yeah, please.
so if you look at our attorney bills, so our attorney bills right now are $22,000. The budget was $20,000. But inside that $22,000 is $3,800, which was the MDD. The MDD got a legal opinion from Andy. It was $3,800, which the MDD had to pay. We're not paying it. Well, but we pay Andy's bill. So that $3,800 is sitting as a revenue on the other side, and $3,800 is sitting in our 22, because we write one check to Andy. So if you netted it, we'd be under the budget. But because he won't let us net it, it shows 22 instead of 18.
Can I ask you a question?
That's the netting.
Is $3,800 the standard fee for an opinion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I charge by the hour,
So,
or I charge for my time. It's not, I don't have a standard
so
number.
I'm just curious, like, it seems like a lot to get an attorney. And I'm not rushing.
I'd have to look at it and see how much detail there was in research.
So
It
the
depends on,
I was gonna say,
there's a lot of variables.
I get it.
some of the labor rate probably depends on the attorney that's actually doing the research too.
yeah. Well, it depends on the issue, how complex it is,
That's
higher
true.
law, you know, I mean,
There's
it's
a lot of variables.
a lot of variables. Okay, so on the, so as we roll ahead through the numbers, basically, you know, building inspections are plugging along. We guessed 18, we're at 14. Again, you know, if we don't have any new houses, we'll end up probably close to that number. If we have the extra big house comes in, our thing's going to be 40, and we'll probably, that number is going to blow through the 18, but the revenue blew through the 30. So again, they kind of work in lockstep. Town maintenance is just a catch-all for, you know, when the flagpole falls over, or we need new flags, or, you know, the banners out front, the doorknob falls off City Hall. We had a toilet break last year. I mean, it's kind of a catch-all for, you know, things where we need to maintain things in the town. You know, something breaks, or, you know, I think we might have put the new bulletin board materials in that thing, for example. It's just a catch-all category when we need to have some, you know, if something happens, you know, where we need to paint the fence or something. I mean, that's kind of a catch-all category.
It's also everyday maintenance items, like.
Oh, it's also like, yeah, exactly. It's the alarm for the building, it's the pest control for the building, it's, if we shampoo the carpets once a year after pet day, then, you know, it's that kind of stuff. So it's kind of just a, you know, it's a catch-all category for the stuff here. Animal control is minimal. Parks and playgrounds, this one's in blue. This is the ones I talked about, which is absolutely, totally discretionary. We could decide this number is 0, we could decide this number is 30,000. Now, one of the things that we did, so about 4 years ago, when we did the concrete roads, one of the things that we did, we talked about, and we agreed when we were doing the financing for the roads, was that we would only raise the debt financing. Instead of charging 20 cents to pay for the debt, we'd only charge 5. But the way we were going to pay for it was we were going to slash everything else. So anything that was discretionary, we were going to zero it out until we figured out, we never paid that kind of money before, make sure we were okay. The one that we agreed to slash to 0 was the playground. We set the playground to 0 for several years. We didn't do anything out there. The same with the road repairs. We set the road repairs to 0. And we said, nope, we're not going to, those are totally discretionary. And until we figure out our bond payments and figure out how comfortable we are, then we'll go back to it. So last year, we now have got a real good handle on it. We're doing fine on the cash flow. We're in good shape. You know, sales taxes have gone up nicely. We've got a couple more houses coming in. So we started now spending a little bit more money on the playground. So last year, we allocated $12,000 to the playground. We've only spent $2,000, which is the teeter-totter, the new piece of equipment. We talked about, the council had, I believe, So we talked about conceptually, we were, I believe, everybody was conceptually agreed that we had some good ideas. Clint had brought up the issues about screening. We have screening requirements now in the city. You have to screen your air conditioners and your garbage cans. And if you look at the playground, we don't do that. So if we require all new houses to screen their garbage cans and their air conditioning stuff of the new people, we ought to at least be good citizens, and we ought to do it here. And it is the playground. I mean, if you're going to make the playground nice, they don't really need to be looking at necessarily the trash containers. That was
The service.
yeah, yes. So that was something that we talked about, and I think everybody was kind of on board with. That was a nice improvement to the playground. I brought in pictures where I think it's really important that we put just a light 3-rail, split rail fence, nice little white fence, just along Lakecrest. And we keep the kids from running out in the street. We don't need to fence the whole playground. We're not fencing it to keep out predators. We're fencing it so that when we have the Easter egg hunt and when we have the things over there, that's really the point we want to be careful of. Because we all know everybody stops at the stop sign. Nobody zips past this. And the other thing, to be honest, look, we put a playground directly behind a building. It's not like you can see it. So I think it'd be really a nice kind of meet our nice little rural feel, nice quiet thing. So we had talked about, I brought in pictures of just putting up a nice little split rail fence just over on this side, running along Lakecrest. Yeah.
What should the general public do if they have an opinion about what is a possibility? In other words, like a fence or a sign that says, our children are playing here or whatever.
Tell one of us. I mean, ultimately what's going to happen, one of the things I would like to do is at some point, I have people now, I've talked to some of the people that have the little kids. And I've told them, look, I'm not, you tell me what you think. So they're the ones that actually spurred on getting the new swings. Because they've got little kids, and they're the ones who want little buckets so the littlest ones can swing back and forth. So they really have been coming with all the suggestions. And ultimately, we're going to end up having to have some sort of parks, like advisory board or something, where citizens can say, what do you want? What do you want at Witt Park? Because I don't care. I mean, if you want a basketball court, that's great. I mean, and I think, Elizabeth, you might have talked to Clint about, things where you can poll people, or you can get, what would be a good thing? And that's a perfect example of, we're not saying whether or not we should have ordinance against X or Y, because that's going to be impossible to get any, you can't get 100% agreement on anything. But if you said, look, what would you like to see in the playground? Here's a laundry list. Here's 10 possibilities. You tell us. Because the nice thing about that is people have kids, the ones that are vested in it, are the ones that are going to participate, which is what you want, right? I mean, you don't want accountants picking playground. That's not a good plan.
So Becky, it's part of the budget process. It's part of the budget process. We're going to be asking citizens to take a look at the budget. If there's money you think we should save, we're open to the opinions. Hopefully we're going to have some budgetary meetings. We encourage you to attend and take a look at where money's being spent, where money's being made. And if you see things that are missing, then what the mayor has presented is a starting point. And we'll look at to make modifications as needed.
Yes, I was just unclear as the mechanism with which
you just tell
we
us.
should work. Is
And
come to the meetings too, because when we manipulate the numbers, it would be helpful if there were more people here.
Now, one of the things that I do here, okay, and this is important because there's been some misperception out there. Okay, so look, I put a number like 10,000 in there for the Parks and Playground as a starting point. Now, do I have a list of equipment that equals $10,000? No, I don't have anything. But because I'm not going to do that, if the consensus of the council is we want to make it zero. So the first thing we do, because I'm not going to spend all that time getting bids and estimates and researching the stuff and doing all of that, unless there's a commitment that yes, we're interested in spending some money. We don't know how much, yes, but let's plug 10. If you say, look, maybe let's spend, yes, we want to spend some money on that, then what I do is I'll bring you a list of projects and say, look, here's kind of what I've thought about. Here's kind of the cost estimates. You can prioritize or pick, let's do number 1 and number 3 and not number 2 or whatever. But I'm not bringing in a list right now until there's a commitment that says, yes, if you want to zero that line out, that's the consensus, that's fine. Then that's great. I don't have to go out and do all that information. So basically when I plug in numbers like that, the idea is, you know, here's an idea, and if you're comfortable with spending money, then you'll tell me, and then I'll bring you a list, and then we'll kind of winnow it down. But that's the idea. That's a placeholder to say, are we going to spend money, or are we not going to spend money? Okay? And I just plugged in 10. We had 12 last year, I plugged in 10. I did get, unfortunately, I got an email and I forgot to print it, but one of the issues we're having at the playground, if you've been on that playground, besides the equipment needs some little repairs, is, we all know, the mulch, the ground. It's got weeds in it, it splinters. The mulch is a problem. It always has been a problem. So if we want to replace that, if we were to replace that mulch, there's 3 options. One is this kind of rubber mulch. It's like chips, rubber chips, basically. Right? I see the Colemans put them in their flower bags. That's a 500-pound bag. So there's chips. The other thing is like turf, like astroturf. It's green, looks like grass. Looks very nice. The third thing is a big rubber mat. Rubber mat. So I had Serena Lepley, who's been kind of spearheading a lot of this stuff. She went out and got bids on it. The same people that did our playground equipment bid on that. The chips to put in and have them installed were like $28,000. To put in the AstroTurf was like $58,000. To put in the rubber mat was like $70,000. Which means we're not doing that. So I may come back to you if we decide we want to spend money and figure out what the actual rubber chips cost, and then figure out if, I know people in town that have bobcats, if we can participate in maybe digging it out ourselves. Because spreading rubber chips is not difficult. So there's a possibility I may bring you some costs to see if we can make that doable, because that's a problem we have. Yeah, Cheryl?
Is rubber chips a chucking hazard for the small ones?
They use them on playgrounds, so that's a good question. I'm gonna defer. I assume since it's a playground maker that.
Depends on how small you make it.
Yeah.
So I guess we need to look at the dimension of how, I'm pretty sure they're not gonna be selling something